Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glance and see this thing running across the yard. A good sized man or something looks like a man. I don't know what it was. Just it ran across the yard.
Okay. You've had problems in the neighborhood before?
Yeah, my dog was killed here just recently. I don't know what it was, whatever it is, it's running. I couldn't catch it if I was going to chase it. So whatever it was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better. Sheriff, Neil.
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
This son of a bitch is about 6 foot 9, I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Okay, hang on.
He's right.
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, I got him. He's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
And the guy is on foot.
I don't know what, he's a big, real big person, that's all I can say.
Okay, but it is a person.
Yeah, I'd say it was a person or somebody really big. But he's all in black.
Is he a black male or a white male? Did you actually see what it is, or was he just wearing black?
He's all black and he's big. He is big.
Hello, everyone, from the remote jungles of Clinton Falls, Indiana. This is Larry Battson talking all Bigfoot on a Friday night as we celebrate the 4th of July holiday. Hello, Carrie and Perry. Nice to have you with us tonight. Bob, nice to have you along with us here on Facebook Live, where we talk all Bigfoot. We do that every Friday night. We've had wonderful, wonderful audiences, I have to say. Great crowds. It's been very inspiring to do this. It absolutely has been. I want you to be sure that you check out our Facebook page, Footers Forum, filled with lots of different things on there. In fact, recently we've had the opportunity to share with everyone the amazing documentaries and videos, etc., from Todd Prescott up in Canada. Some historical events that he's let us post on Footers Forum, and you need to check those out for the Bigfoot enthusiasts. Hello, Loretta. Nice to have you with us tonight here on Facebook Live on a Friday night on what's supposed to be a string of 90-degree days. So you be out in the woods, 90 degrees, huh? Might be a good time to go. You never know. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, of course, as always, we have my co-host, the Yeti. See how I slipped that underneath there? North America's greatest drinking device. Keep that beverage cold for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. It absolutely will. We'll stick that right over there, so it's about in our way. If you have any comments or things you'd like to tell us, please do so. Also want to remind everyone of the various pieces of artwork we have available. Here on Facebook, you can just message me, Larry Battson. Good evening, Reggie. Hi, Jeff. Nice to have you along. This is the most recent piece that is available, signed and numbered. That's right, signed and numbered. So you can send me a message through Facebook, and we'll get that put together. Of course, the one that's, excuse me, I have been told, that people use this to frighten their grandchildren. I hope that's not true. But feel like something watching. That's the name of that piece. So there it is. Feel like something watching. That also is available. Signed and numbered. Michael, nice to have you along. Well, thank you very much, Michael. That's very nice of you to say. Just keep up the great work. Well, we try. And don't forget, every day for the youngsters, well, we have the oldsters as well. 3 o'clock, Monday through Friday, we draw animals with animal art and fun. And you draw along with me, and we draw all kinds of different creatures and critters and beasts, whatever you want to call them. That happens every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. And, of course, 9:30 on Wednesday nights. That's when we talk all animals. That's what we do. So, yeah, so be sure you check that out, too. 9:30 on Wednesday nights. But this is Friday night, without a doubt. And Friday night is the night we talk all Bigfoot. And I have to tell you, I had the opportunity to watch a couple of videos that have been posted by my good friend Todd Prescott from Canada. He is, I would say without a doubt, the #1 historian, especially John Green's legacy. He's the one that went through all the files and organized it, put together that beautiful website. And he's been releasing tapes and so forth that have never really been heard that often or at all. And also films that have never been seen. From what was the first #1 Bigfoot conference, which occurred at the University of British Columbia, and I believe the year was 1978. I believe that was the year for the first conference that hosted such notables as John Green, Peter Byrne, and Ellen Grover Krantz, wide variety. And it's fantastic footage to watch if you are interested in the Bigfoot legacy, because Todd has done an absolutely amazing job. One of the most intriguing things that he has posted, and I enjoyed so much listening to it, was Roger Patterson's interview with Fred Beck from Ape Canyon. Well, Annabelle Parker's with us tonight and family checking in. Nice to have you along, Annabelle. And Annabelle is the future of Bigfoot research. Already she wants to be an anthropologist and she wants to study the Sasquatch. So God love her, and she's just out of kindergarten, going into the first grade, I believe. Watch, I'll be wrong. I'm sorry. But we love Annabelle. Hello, Linda. Nice to have you with us tonight here on Facebook Live as we talk all Bigfoot, as we do every Friday night. But the interview with Roger Patterson and Fred Beck. Roger Patterson recorded all these tapes. In fact, that's how he got Bob Gimlin interested in going with him into the wilds of Northern California, Bluff Creek area, where they would eventually get that film. And Roger Patterson had done a lot of different things as far as interviews and research before that event happened. And one of the things that he did was he had a conversation with Fred Beck. And when you listen to Mr. Beck tell about that night, when these mountain men, these mountain people, these giant apes attacked their cabin, his voice is so convincing. You do not doubt a word that he says. Not a word. Now, they were minors, of course, and this happened in you would ask me, 24, I believe. Hello, Tyler Vance. Nice to have you along. Shannon's with us tonight, all the way from Arkansas. We are having a great night tonight. Tyler Vance, one of the researchers right here from Indiana. But they were harassing these creatures. Fred Beck and the fellow miners were basically, they would shoot first and ask questions later. And that's what started it all. They had shot several times at these things. And they shot the famous story, or the one that fell into what was Ape Canyon. And that night in their cabin, it was bombarded with stone, logs, the pounding. It was like it sounded to me when he would talk about it, it sounded like one of those bad horror movies. They could hear him on the roof, so they were basically shooting through the roof. Now that area would have such tremendous winters. They built this cabin. It was a strong cabin. And good for them. I'll tell you that right now. And Fred Beck said one gentleman shot a Sasquatch. And he said, I know I hit it, and it did not even slow it down. Now right there, that would have told me, we need to leave. Because if a gunshot won't even affect one, what are we going to do? Because look at these things. They're 8, 9 feet tall. Tremendous strength. They're throwing these huge rocks on top of the cabin and logs. pounding on the side of the cabin, screaming, such tremendous screams, and what could have created anything like that? I mean, and they left a lot of their equipment when they finally decided to leave. They finally decided to get out of there. They left a lot of their equipment. Now, when I was reading about this, and I've read about it so many times, I thought they'd left all their equipment, but according to the interview with Roger Patterson, they had not. So, I guess I was misinformed, and I'm glad to be corrected on that. But even still, these are tough men. For them to leave their claim, get the heck out of there. There had to definitely be something going on, and there was. Because for years and years and years and years, people would talk about the ape men, or whatever they wanted to call them, that lived in the mountains. Just right there next to Mount St. Helens. In fact, you know that when Mount St. Helens erupted, Ape Canyon was destroyed. No longer exists like it did when Fred Beck and the other miners were there. And what an explosion that was. And the stories that after the explosion, the ash, they'd find these huge footprints all over that mountain. And the ash these animals would leave perfect footprints. Perfect. Absolutely the best they'd ever seen. The only problem was getting up on the mountain, making your way through that ash to cast them. Then there's the story of when they were taking out all the animals that had died because they didn't want to contaminate all the waterways in that area. So they wanted to get these dead animals out of there. And they used helicopters with these huge nets filled with deer, elk. One fellow said, I saw one of these nets dangling underneath a helicopter. And I looked up in there and I could not believe my eyes, because out hung an arm. I could see what looked like a human arm. When we went to Shepherdstown, West Virginia, for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to speak on the subject of Bigfoot and Sasquatch, the scientists, zoologists, biologists, rangers, Secret Service people. That was the first time they'd ever hosted anything like that. And a lot of people thought that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was completely ignoring this, the legend of Sasquatch, Bigfoot. A lot of people thought they don't believe it exists. No scientists believe that they exist. Well, there are a few that do. There are a few. Jeff Meldrum. Of course, Grover Krantz did, absolutely. Numerous ones. In fact, Jane Goodall, she's been quoted as saying she thinks there's definitely something to the Bigfoot legend. And if she wasn't so busy with her research on chimpanzees and the life that entails, she would pursue that. She has said that. My good friend Bill Dranginis, he had an opportunity to speak with her. And that's exactly what she told him. That she would definitely pursue it. But the Sasquatches in the northwestern part of our country, California, Oregon, Washington, and up into British Columbia, that's a whole different deal. Because you're dealing with millions and millions and millions of acres of wilderness. When we would look at the maps that John Green used to publish of where the sightings had occurred, there would be just certain areas. People would say, that's the only spot. No. That's not the only spot. Those are where small towns are located. So people around small towns would see them. All this acreage, millions of acres, that spread all across Canada where no one went. Obviously, no sightings. No one was there. No one was there to see them. I mean, the forest was there. It was absolutely. Larry, I gave in and downloaded the Facebook app just to watch this. You're welcome. Well, you know, whatever it takes. And as always, the Yeti, North America's greatest drinking device. Tonight it is hosting lemonade. It is. It's hosting lemonade. I find this Sasquatch thing kind of funny, Bigfoot, because now, of course, there's so many researchers. And last week, groups that do it, which is fantastic. I think it's fantastic. Spending a lot of time in the outdoors. I met some spectacular people. One of my interests with this. But I've also met some people that were, well, they were okay, I guess. One of them would be Renee DeHinden. Renee DeHinden, of course, the legendary Renee DeHinden, who basically harassed Bob Gimlin into buying his rights to the Patterson-Gimlin film. And Renee never, in his entire lifetime, never had the opportunity to actually see one. But he was, I don't like to use the word believer, but he was on the same level with John for the fact that they both thought that the only way we could ever prove their existence was to kill one. That's what they believed. And to the scientific community, that's probably true. It's not part of my agenda. I watched the show the other night on the Discovery Channel, and that's what all these men were wanting to do. And they were loaded for bear. But guess what? Didn't have much luck. In fact, I was sitting there watching this, and I'm thinking to myself, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to do a darn thing. Because the moment you guys walked into that forest, I don't care how much camouflage you had on. They can smell you. They can hear you. And of course, they can see you. Day or night, they see everything. And they can be as quiet can be. And if you ever walk through the forest, where you did not hear any sounds, no birds, day or night, the sound of mosquitoes, the sound of maybe a coyote, didn't hear anything. People always used to tell me, they'd say, man, I just get the creepiest feeling. It was like those coon hunters did there in Lost Lake in Morgan Monroe State Forest. And they got to their spot and they'd hunted for 20 plus years. And their dogs were going crazy. They're thinking to themselves, this place is just full of raccoons tonight. My gosh, these dogs are going nuts. So they let them out. Let him get to work. And as soon as those dogs jumped off of that truck, they heard a snap behind them. And they turned around and they saw something that was about 8.5 feet tall, covered with black hair, and looked them all up and down like they're little bits of nothing, and turned around and walked off into the forest. And those men eventually got their dogs in and never went back to that spot again. Dustin Parker says, Annabelle watched it too and was madder than a hornet. You're right, Annabelle, me too. She thought it was a joke and told us she was going to tell Larry not to watch it. I happened to watch it, Annabelle. I did watch it. Because I turned on the television. I always hunt, the finding Bigfoot. I can sit through a little bit of that. A little bit. And then And then I think that particular program was called "Is Bigfoot Real?" I think that's what the name of that one was. Then when they went out of commercial and started going back into it, I'm sitting there going, "These guys are idiots. These guys are stupid. Just stupid. What do they think? What did they? No, think about this for a minute." And Annabelle already knows this, so I'm not telling her anything. But one's never been really photographed well except the Patterson Gimlin film. Oh, the Paul Freeman film's okay. But still, I think it looks pretty good, but still, it could be fabricated. That one could be. Because there's so much vegetation around the creature, you know. There's enough vegetation and so forth, it could hide things. And I've seen a couple of videos that maybe. But, so, if one's not been filmed or photographed that many times, well, do you really think that you can go into the forest and just hunt one up, find it just like that? It's, God love you. Good luck with that. But sure, it's like a needle in a darn haystack is exactly what it is. Good evening, Kent. Hello, Tracy from Greenfield and Linda. Dang, scary encounter. Yeah, I know. Debbie, nice to have you along. Well, and Loretta says, and you're right, they hide well. They hide very, very well. They're almost invisible once the sun's gone down. They are invisible. I mean, I heard the incident where these guys were camping down in the Greene County area here in Indiana. And they were fishing. And there was Grandpa, Grandma, and their little granddaughter. And they were fishing. And they were down along the lake. They had a Coleman lantern set up. So it kind of lit everything up, which was great for crappie fishing. And they heard a noise behind him. The only one that turned around was the granddaughter. And when she turned around, there it was. 7 feet tall, covered with black hair, and was looking down at her. And she said the moment she said anything, it took off. They climbed up that bank as fast as they could, and they could not believe the speed that this thing was moving. And lo and behold, there was another car coming down the road, and the thing ran right in front of that car, and this car turned into their campground area. And they both got out, and they had a conversation of what they had just seen. Something that big, that powerful, that moves so fast. You know, you talk about football players, when they always say about a big lineman, man, you know, he's big, but he can't move that fast. Well, this lineman moves pretty darn quick. He can move pretty darn quick. Loretta says, I got a photo of one. It was 10 feet away. Never hears or saw it, but the camera caught it. I would like to see that photograph, Loretta. So if you would like to message it to me, I'd love to see it. If you want us to share it, we'll do that. On to Footers Forum, our Facebook page. It's all Bigfoot. Yeah, it's fun. And that animal's run by Cody Herring. He goes out and investigations. I will be soon. As many of you may know, I'm still, I had my cancer surgery was 3 weeks ago, so I'm still kind of recovering from that. And then a week before that, I had another kidney procedure, and I wasn't quite over that yet. And plus, I have Parkinson's. What else? No, I have a thyroid issue. So, you know, this is getting old thing. So I've got to recover. Once I recover, I'll be back lurking, because right here on our very own property, we are just we have Sasquatch reports around us. I won't say frequently, but they've happened a few times over the years. Loretta says, I'm going to show you at the conference. So I must be referring to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, which is August 15th. And we're all hoping that maybe they can still do that. We know with all the things we've been going through these last few months, that the possibility of that not happening, it could occur. So, but I don't know anything yet. So I will let you know when I know if I'm permitted to do so. But we are scheduled to speak at that conference. So if you're coming to Ohio, we'd love to meet you. Yeah, Linda says getting old, not fun. No, it's not. Well, you know, it has its certain attributes, I guess. At least you're not crazy anymore. You know, you don't, as a youngster, you feel invincible, so you don't try that stuff anymore. So I know, because I raced motocross for about 3 or 4 years, and that was really dumb for trophies. So that's when you're young, and that's when you feel invincible. Alan says, I'm 59. This getting old crap is getting old. Yes, I know. And you're only 59. I've got you by a few, Alan. I've got you by a few. This is Larry Battson. We are broadcasting from the remote jungles of Clinton Falls, Indiana, right here in west central Indiana. And we're talking all Bigfoot tonight. I encourage your questions, your comments. We'll discuss them frequently tonight. And Linda says to Alan, amen to that. Yes, it is. It's quite challenging. Though I will admit, though, I can still go in with my bears and tigers and stuff. So as long as I'm able to do that, you know, get a little bit of their wisdom from time to time. You know, you can look in an animal's eyes and realize their survival instincts. They are amazing. So you can imagine what a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, what their survival instincts must be. They must be absolutely incredible, just incredible. You know, I have the theory that I believe in the western part of the United States that the Sasquatch actually follows the mountain lion or the cougar, puma, whatever you want to call them. They follow them for hunting. They let the cat do the kill. They move the cougar off the kill, and then they take it. They do it to hunters, too. In fact, I talked to a gentleman one night. He says he's lost 5 deer over the years. That he killed the deers, and by the time he got up to it, it had already been drug off. There was no drag marks. I shouldn't say drug off. It was carried off. Carried off. Jeff. Hi, Larry. Got my someone looking at you print. Thanks. You're welcome, Jeff. I can't show it to my toddler. Too scary. Oh, well, you know. This is the one he's referring to. Yeah. That's Jeff Scott from Texas. So glad you got your print. My wife was so nervous because she's the one that packed it and sent it to you. And she did it with such care. She said it made me a nervous wreck. But we're so thrilled I hadn't heard that you got it. So that is fantastic. Oh, we'll have to talk to you about motorcycles. I will tell you the last time I rode a motorcycle was nonstop to Florida and back. A 400 Honda, and after that I was done. Larry, can you repeat the story of one of your tigers getting spooked by... Oh, absolutely. We had friends over. I had some, well, what they were old gator hunting guys I knew from Florida that came up. And we were working on a bear enclosure, and I had to take off and buy some tiger food. So while I was gone, when I got back, one of them said, there. He said, something was walking up your ravine. I don't know what it was. It sounded big, but we didn't see nothing. Oh, okay. So I didn't say any more about it. Well, that night I'm going to feed the cats, and we had at that time we had an African lion, a couple of mountain lions. I think we had 3 tigers. I think we did. And one tiger in particular was a Siberian tiger. And he was huge. His name was Louis. He was 600 pounds. Huge cat. Now, when we would feed at night, people don't understand. They have the instinct of aggression, whether they kill the food or they don't have to kill the food. They still have that instinct of aggression. So when I'd walk up with the meat every night by his enclosure, he would get, he'd go off. He'd get upset. So what I would do is I'd move him to the other side of the enclosure and then close the door, a sliding guillotine-like door that we'd close. And I could go in there safely and put out the food. And then we'd let him back in and he'd eat. And he'd still get grumpy. Well, this particular night, I'm walking up with a bucket of meat, ready for this, normal procedure every night. And he's not coming. So I'm shaking the bucket. Here, come on, Louis, come on, let's eat. Not coming. So I'm thinking, what the heck? So I'm looking down through the enclosure and I can see clear at the other end, he's sitting there. And it's like one of those concrete statues that you'd see by someone's driveway, Just sitting there looking straight back into the woods, straight back at that valley that those guys were talking about earlier. And I looked down at all my other cats. They were all on the line, the mountain lions, and every one of those cats was looking straight back into the trees, into the woods. Now, people would say, well, maybe it was a deer. Well, here's the thing. Deer would walk by there. They ignored them. They would walk right by. It wasn't a deer. And I still kick myself because after I fed the cats, I just went inside. But I kicked myself that I didn't set that bucket of meat down, walk around the alligator building, then walk back into the woods, because I would have probably walked into someone. I still regret that I didn't do that. Seems like there's a lot of sightings down in Jeffersonville, Indiana. Have you heard anything? Yeah. Yes, I have. All that Hoosier National Forest, all of that. That's all prime real estate as far as Sasquatch habitat. All good. It's all good. And the way to do that is, if you go down there, go to the smaller towns, talk to some of the people. They may look at you like you're nuts, but talk to some. And you'll run into someone who'll say, hey, well, I saw blah, blah. So maybe that gives you a place to start. Then go camping there. Spend a day or two. But when you go into the woods, don't be lurking around. Don't be walking around like you're looking for something around every corner. No, don't do that. Because if you're looking for it, you'll never find it. I was speaking with a fellow researcher the other day, and we were talking about that most of the time when you go into the forest, 99% of the time, nothing happens. We get the people that say they have rocks thrown at them. Well, that occasionally happens. They hear the sounds, the vocals, and that sort of thing will happen. As far as an actual sighting, there are so many people that go into the woods that haven't even seen one that it's what they're looking for. No, haven't seen one at all. You're welcome, Alan. You're welcome. It was my pleasure. What else did I want to mention tonight? I want to mention something about tonight. We were talking about Todd Prescott, and I was going into the Fred Beck Ape Canyon story, which is such an amazing story. And if you go to Footer's Forum, you can actually listen to the entire interview. Excuse me. And it's really great to listen to that. And also the conference from 1978 with John Green, Peter Byrne, Grover Krantz. They were all there. That's an incredible piece of footage that Todd Prescott has put on YouTube. Then there's an old documentary that was just posted by Todd. I believe it was Todd posted it. Maybe not. That we have on Footer's Forum, which is an early '70s documentary on the Sasquatch, and it's pretty fascinating because a lot of the questions they asked back then, people are still asking. Things haven't changed any. They haven't. Myself, for one, have always thought that someone would come up with something, but it hasn't happened. When I was a kid, my parents would spend a week-long summer vacation staying with the relatives in Mitchell. I wish I knew about that stuff back then. Well, yeah, Mitchell, Indiana, down there by, Jeff says, I've heard stories of people hearing a type of speech when they have some type of encounter. Have you ever heard of speech encounters? I have. In fact, the report that there's two reports that I remember right off the top of my head. The first one is a gal and a couple of her friends and her dog. We're down in what many of you know here in Indiana as Morgan Monroe State Forest. They're on Far Road. And on Far Road, their Jeep, or it wasn't a Jeep, it was a Toyota Land Cruiser. That was an insult. I'm sorry. Toyota Land Cruiser, the old style. You know what one I'm talking about? The one you see lurking around in Africa. Yeah, heck of a truck. Well, she jammed it into a tree. She slid off the road and couldn't get it out. So the three gals are stranded. They can't get the truck moved. They kept hearing these voices from the forest. And it sounded like human speech. And they'd hear that. They'd say, hey, we need some help here. Hey! And they'd hear them voices, more of those voices. So they're wondering, what in the heck's going on here? Now, here was the thing that was really, really weird. Every time she would park that truck, she said, her dog would hop out. This time, the dog stayed in the truck, did not leave the truck. And as those three gals were sitting in that truck, trying to bounce it off that tree to get enough momentum to bounce it back onto the road, something grabbed the back end of that truck and pulled it out. And before they knew what had happened, it pulled it out to the middle of that old fire road. And they put it in first gear. They headed out, got back on the highway, and they drove home. And about halfway home, they go, what happened back there? What was that all about? Because something pulled that truck out of that ravine when it was wedged up against that tree. And then the fellow in Washington talks about he was at his neighbor's house, and I've told this story many times. In fact, this is my friend Gene Romo, one of his favorite Sasquatch encounter stories. When they're standing on the porch, and it's late at night, and the guys are talking, and this big Rottweiler's sitting on the porch with him. And this Rottweiler all of a sudden goes into they can hear it. They can hear something moving in the forest, and the dog already knew it before they realized it. The dog was staring back into the forest, but the dog would not leave the porch. This was a big Rottweiler, big, tough dog. Excuse me. And then they heard coming out of the forest, Mowgli! Mowgli! That was a Rottweiler's name. Several of the people that lived on that road had lost dogs. This Rottweiler apparently was too smart. And these things in the forest had heard him calling his dog so many times. There they was. Mowgli! Mowgli! Trying to call the dog into the forest, and the dog knew better. Back then, they decided that's when they needed to go into that house. Guess who led the way? Mowgli. Benny Cudd's in the house tonight. Nice to always have Benny Cudd. You know, doing that Moogly voice, it kind of parched me. I'm so sorry, everybody. I guess I'm not quite well yet. I'm working on it, though. We're progressing. I promise you, we are progressing. And then you got Ron Moria. Now, a lot of the things that Ron has said, you know, I'm kind of on board. I'm on board with. Ron's a really nice man. Talked to him a couple times. He's checked in here before. Watched the craziness on Friday nights. And his Sierra sounds, of course, has vocalizations in them. But I've heard more than one different type of vocalization, but they all sound very similar. Very, very similar. Okay, Gretchen. She says, hi, I'm buying grapes right now. Well, good. I don't know if that's doing anything. But she's buying grapes, so I'm glad she is. Yeah, I am. You know, we were talking about their ability. I think they can imitate about any animal they want to imitate. That's my feelings about it. I just feel that they can imitate the sounds of whistles of owls. They mimic coyotes. In fact, I can remember the story from Washington where the sheriff sat in his patrol car one night. And he could hear the sounds of coyotes in the prairie, forest. Then he heard something that sounds kind of like a coyote. Then the sounds came together. It was all of a sudden like a battle broke out. As soon as it got light, he walked back there to see if he could find anything. And he did. He found 2 coyotes laying at the base of this tree, and whatever it was had taken these coyotes and beat them up against this tree and killed them. Apparently, the same thing that was trying to imitate those coyotes. That's what they were trying to do. And of course, the sounds. Bob Jackson, the Yellowstone Park Ranger, he called the sounds of the Sasquatches in Yellowstone. They'd hear these roars come out of the valleys. And he said it reminded him of the sound of 1,000 elk going to their death. Can you imagine that? And here was a man, when he heard that sound, he was with a fishing guide, and another individual had spent all of his time in the outdoors, all of his time in Yellowstone Park. And they hear sounds that they can't identify. Glacier National Park. The head of Glacier was on a wolf count one winter, and he had one of the young rangers with him. They were in a tent. And just about daybreak, they heard this sound rip across the valley. They couldn't believe their ears. And he turned and looked at that rookie, and he said, I have been here for 30 plus years, and I have never, ever heard anything like that. Make sure your gun's loaded. James, hey Larry, watching from Cleveland, Tennessee. Welcome aboard, James. Thank you for tuning in here on Facebook Live. Cleveland, Tennessee. What town is that? How far is that from Nashville? I've been to Tennessee. I've been to Dale Hollow a few times. Quite a few times, really. You know, and there's a good spot, too. There's another great spot where they've heard sounds they can't explain. Dale Hollow, Tennessee, the bottomless lake. I know, yes, absolutely. So it's like, listen to some Bigfoot sounds, huh? Let's do it. You know, that sound. Those are from Puyallup, Washington. And those particular recordings were given to me by John Green. And when they would hear those sounds, everyone was in question what they were. So one night, a law enforcement individual heard those sounds and he decided to walk toward them. Well, he basically walked into an 8-foot creature. That's what he walked into. James says 30 miles from Chattanooga and 2 hours from Nashville. Wow, that's God's country down there, Tennessee. Love Tennessee. Loretta says chilling. Got them in early tonight, sneaky. One of our weekly viewers, Shannon Johnson from down there in Arkansas, she has to work tonight. And I've played those before, and she says she walking to her house to her car in the dark. So after that is kind of exciting. I could see that. But I told one Bigfoot person who's going to go out with us, I said, here's what you need to do. I said, see if you can find on YouTube some gorilla calls, some gorilla screams and that sort of thing. And he did. He was successful. He did. I said, take those out in the woods and play those. And I guess that night got very interesting for them. It stirred them up. I guess it stirred them up. So once I get to feeling better, I want to do that too, because I think that would be, stir them up. But then I think about when I'm talking about doing that, which I probably will, definitely, as Michael says. I think about the Native American woman who said, I can take you where they're at and I can call them in, but if you get it between a male and a female or a male and a baby, the male will kill you. I said, oh, really? How does he do that? He will grab you by the ankles and beat you up against a tree. So she tells me that bit of information, and I didn't go. That wasn't why I'm married. Not going into the forest at night with an Indian maiden. But besides that, I'd heard the story before. I'd heard about the sheriff when the coyotes I just talked about just moments ago. And I heard from one of our people that joined us on Friday night, Austin Lee. He had a deer in his scopes, and it wasn't one he wanted, so he just was watching it. And all of a sudden, out of the brush came a Sasquatch. He totally was a disbeliever. He didn't think they existed. Well, he found out differently because he watched his Sasquatch run it up to this deer and punch it right in the rib cage and knock it to the ground. And as soon as it knocked it to the ground, the Sasquatch grabbed it by the legs and beat it up against a tree and killed it. Then tucked it underneath his arm, carried it off. That was it. And he still to this day, he remembers it as if it happened yesterday. Jeff says, when I heard a possible scream in the woods east of Fort Worth, Texas, as a young kid, all the other normal wood sounds, insects, birds, etc., stopped. Yeah. Dead silence. This was the middle of summer afternoon. My friend and I ran the half-mile back to his house. It's curious to me in your audio clip that all the other normal insect and critter sounds continued. The reason for that, Jeff, is that the recorder was basically placed on a windowsill. So the birds around the house, these sounds were coming from quite a distance away. So the birds that you heard around his neighborhood would not have been intimidated or influenced by the Sasquatches, because these were farther away. I mean, because I guess the volume on it was incredible. So they were at least, probably at least a mile away. And that's Washington. Man, it's wild and woolly. In fact, I was talking to someone that was there right now, and they were talking about walking to the forest and how quiet it would get sometimes. And you get that feeling. You get this feeling that something's watching you. Every hair on the back of your neck will stand up. When you feel that something's watching you, and what is it? You just stop and you look around through the woods, and you look around you. You stay in the same location. You just turn around, stare in the forest. Try to see the glimpse of whatever, what eyes are watching me. Then if you have that feeling at night, well, as I said earlier, the Sasquatch is practically invisible in the dark. This is natural camouflage. He could be watching you and just be a few feet away. You wouldn't know it. Except that weird feeling that, like I said, every hair on the back of your neck stands up. It's just not a comfortable feeling. Down in southern Indiana, fellow's getting off work, he was going off. He had a shortcut he would take down this old dirt road. And he's going down this road. And he's looking to the left. And it looks like somebody's walking up the road. You think, oh my God, somebody's had a car. Because out here, you know, the chances of another car coming up and down here is just pretty much doesn't happen at night. So he said, this guy looks like he might have a problem. But all I could see was a shadow. And it was walking upright. So he just naturally assumed it was a person. Until he got just a few feet away from it. And he realized it was hair covered. Black, it looked like, the coloring. And he said, this thing just walked on up the side of that road. He says, the only time it stopped walking is when I stopped my car. And we were looking at each other, just like that. Just a few feet away. And he stepped on that accelerator so fast he had the back end of that car going back and forth down that gravel highway. And his next stop was going to be to the sheriff's office. Because he couldn't believe what he had just seen. That's why I haven't been camping in forever, says I'm not trying to kill the camping industry. I'm just trying. I don't know what I'm trying to do. Someone asked me that. He said, does everybody believe you about the big? No, they don't. But asked me if I care. And I said, there's only one reason I'm interested in this. I am a wildlife educator. I'm interested in wildlife, wild animals. All of them, all around the world. And this could be the greatest scientific discovery ever. Ever. Because imagine finding something. Well, it's been found before. I shouldn't say that. That's not. It's been seen and found many times. But and you know what? Before I go on with my thought, you know what scientists are going to do? Do you have any idea what they're going to do? I'll tell you. They're going to be eating crow in large amounts. Yes, they are. Going to be eating crow. That's why the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, when they invited me to speak on this subject, that was a major big deal. I didn't realize it when I was doing it. These were friends of mine that worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They're friends. And they said for years they wanted me to come and do a Bigfoot talk. And I said, oh, well, just tell me when. We will do it. Then it just got blown up because it was at a facility ran by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I was to give this talk to scientists and naturalists and rangers and Secret Service people, a wide variety of people in law enforcement, biology, zoology, lots of people. But when I went there to give that talk, the head of publicity said to me, he says, I want to show you something. everybody says that we're not interested in it. We've ignored it. They don't know. Because he handed me a 3-page press release that they had issued. What would happen if a living Bigfoot or Sasquatch was found? Whether it had been killed, captured, whatever. What would be the response of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service? They had it all mapped out. They knew exactly what they were going to do. They were going to have an emergency session with Congress, classify it as an endangered species. They were going to have that entire area, wherever it was discovered, patrolled by the National Guard, and no one was going to go in. It was all laid out. They're prepared for it. They're prepared for it right now. And they still ask me, you heard anything new? Huh? Any new developments? Yeah, all the time they'll call me and ask me. And I will be glad to serve them humble pie for dessert, says Alan. Well, I can still remember calling up to the Field Museum wanting to talk to one of the anthropologists about Gigantopithecus blackeye. And one, we got to talking about that. And he was with me. He was with me. He was telling me all this stuff, and it was quite fascinating. But then when I said, do you think there's any possibility that this could be related to or descendant from the Bigfoot or Sasquatch? Click. I mean, he could not have hung up the phone faster. So he is the one that, if it's ever proven, I want to talk to. But George Schaller, the foremost zoologist in the world, who did all the research on the snow leopard in the Himalayas, he has a Sasquatch track on his wall in his office. And people will ask him, they'll say, hey, is there anything to that? Well, he says, just as frank as can be. And this is a scientist now. And what he says is so, so true. There is no evidence that proves they do not exist. There is no evidence that proves they do not exist. Well, then you can go, well, there's no evidence to prove that they don't exist, is there? Of course not. But I've got more evidence from testimony, people that would take a lie detector test, the Patterson-Gimlin film, the tracks that have been found. There's a lot more evidence laid out on the table that they do exist than not so. A lot more. Because I've talked to the people. I've had them tell me about their experiences. Young friend is down there along the river, up for the Wabash River, and he's sitting there trying to record sounds at night. He'd heard these screams. He'd heard them. He wanted recordings of them. So he's sitting there in the dark with the recorder and the microphone in his lap. And he heard the last 3 steps as this thing walked right up behind him. And he was terrified. He did not want to move. He did not want to turn around and look at it. But he reached down to that tape recorder and he turned it on. And he recorded the breathing. It's about what it sounded like. I've heard the recording. And when he played it for a doctor, the doctor said, whatever made that sound had to have 55-gallon oil drums for lungs. And he sat there and he recorded those sounds. And all of a sudden, he heard a twig snap, and he heard it leave, and it was gone. But he had an awesome recording. Just an awesome recording. John Green told me one time, he said, the longer you do this, the more questions you will have. And I have found that to be so true. The more time I spend with this, the more people I talk to, it just makes one think. All these people are not crazy. All these people are not liars. It's either the most fascinating animal that we may have on this planet. Then again, it could be the most spectacular hoax that has ever been pulled off. I don't believe the latter. James from Tennessee. Hey, Larry, I'm originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Moved to Cleveland, Tennessee. Love it here. I belong to a Bigfoot research organization called Mineral. I can't quite remember. A while back in the Cherokee National Forest at Frog Mountain, as they were setting up camp around Frog Mountain. I'm finally learning how to read. Then a group of Army reconnaissance bivouac next to them. They said they would be gone in 30, and they found out there were Bigfoot researchers. Their plans changed. They said all night making noise, and they were all in the woods. Pin, what were they up to? We are puzzled. Sorry for being long. Oh, that's okay. There was a report that I heard that someone heard helicopters. Then they heard the helicopter land in the forest, and they heard all these guys shouting and shooting and carrying on, running down this ravine. And when they called the law enforcement and told them what was going on, the law enforcement said, "Don't worry about it." So, and I think it was in 1964 in the Army training manual, there was a page devoted to the Sasquatch on what to do if you encountered one. And there are these stories that have been coming out of Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan about soldiers running into them in those mountains. And according to these stories, they're not nice. No. And then, of course, we have the stories from Vietnam. Soldiers say that they saw something in the forest, and when they were fighting in Vietnam, it was, hair covered, looked like a man sort of thing. That could have been closer to maybe the Orang Pendak than the Sasquatch, maybe, just because of the part of the world they would see these things. But yeah. And of course, John McKinnon, In Search of the Red Ape, his amazing book on his research on orangutans. And he talked about finding a print there. Taking it back to London, they said, "Well, we've seen these before. We can't tell you what it is, but you're not the first one to have a photograph or a casting of this type of foot." So, there's so many. Well, then Ohio, Conneaut, Ohio, my friend that lives over there, a neighbor came over and said, "I want to show you something. Come back in the woods with me." And he went back in the woods. He said, "No, be quiet. Here, we'll go up the top of this hill. I want to show you this." And they get to the top of the hill, and this guy has this netting set up, and he's working these dogs. They're not German Shepherds. They're the ones from Belgium. I forget what they call them. But he's working them only with hand signals. And what was really weird is they had dead rabbits tied to the net. The guy was working these dogs. So what was he doing? And one of the other neighbors said, "Well, I saw him come out of the woods one day, and a car come by and dropped him off, looked like a box of supplies or something, and he went back into the woods." Then again, when my friend from Ohio called the authorities to find out what's going on back in the woods, they just told him, mind your own business. None of your concern. So, see, what's really crazy here? People will ask me, they'll say, "You ever go Bigfoot research?" Well, not, because they live around us. As I was talking earlier about the tiger situation, the tiger saw one in the woods. I'm pretty darn sure it was what it was. So I could be going out turning off the hose or checking the critters at night, so forth. And Sasquatch may be interested in coming around because they want to look at some bears and tigers. Because we don't have any bears here in Indiana per se. Well, I think there are, but Department of Natural Resources would disagree with that, and I believe there are. But anyway, so yeah, we had a wonderful night tonight. We had some great people join us. Tennessee, all across Arkansas, Louisiana, New York, always amazing. I'm just blown away. Want to remind everyone that we're here next Friday night as well, 10 o'clock. If you have anything that you want to talk to me about, please send me a message, Larry Battson, through Facebook. We also have every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. for the kids and the big kids too, animal art. We draw animals. I'm an artist. Well, feel like something watching? Yeah, this print is available. That's what I'm getting to. And our other print, I'm going to do a third one. I saw a pretty good artist. Oh, that's not the right one. I got the wrong one. Well, I can't see in the dark. And I don't know where it went. It disappeared. It left. It has gone away. I must have dropped it off. I don't know what I did with it. It's not important. DNR lies like a rug. Thanks, Larry. Jeff, no, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a safe, wonderful 4th of July. We love you. We thank you for joining us. Remember, every day, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m., Animal Art, 9:30 on Wednesday nights, animal stories from our 40-plus years of traveling across this great country of ours with our animal family and visiting schools. There's a couple stories. Thanks, Larry. James, thank you very much. Jim Johnson, thank you very much. It's very nice of you to say. This is Larry Battson, the animal guy. Alan from North Carolina. North Carolina! Oh, we love you, man. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next Friday night, huh? This is Larry Battson signing off right here on Facebook Live.